For more than a century, a single idea has trailed millions of human beings like a shadow they never asked to carry. A diagnosis that was never real, yet felt unmistakably real. A label that quietly shaped how teachers judged them, how parents spoke about them, and how society subtly feared them. Its name was only child syndrome. To understand how deeply this myth cut, you have to return to a world terrified of its own rapid transformation. America, 1896. Factories rising, cities swelling, and an anxious public convinced the world was losing its moral center. In the middle of that cultural panic stood Granville Stanley Hall, a towering figure in early psychology, searching for simple answers to complex human behaviors. Hall looked at children without siblings and saw not unique individuals, but biological defects. He wrote that being an only child was a disease in itself, a declaration that burned itself deep into the public consciousness. There was no empirical data, no large-scale control groups, only personal bias wrapped in the solemn language of science. Yet society believed him because simple myths that categorize human beings are easy to hold on to when the world feels unpredictable. For the next 70 years, this invented condition became a cultural reflex. It served as a lazy shortcut for parents, educators, and doctors whenever a child was quiet, intense, highly imaginative, or simply out of sync with their peers. But fabricated diagnoses do not merely mislabel people. They shape how a child perceives their own worth long before they understand who they truly are. Decades passed before empirical science finally asked a fundamental question. What if this entire premise was false? In the 1970s, social psychologist Tony Falbo paired with researcher Denise Pollitt to synthesize data across more than 115 independent studies. They examined tens of thousands of subjects spanning multiple cultures and generations. The findings were undeniable in their clarity. The feared spike in pathological selfishness did not exist. There was no elevated risk of narcissism, no inherent social deficit, and no pattern of emotional immaturity. Instead, researchers discovered that children raised without siblings often scored slightly higher on measurable intelligence tests and demonstrated elevated academic drive, a byproduct of absorbing adult vocabulary, reasoning, and emotional expectations without dilution. Falbo did not merely debunk a stereotype. She exposed how a cultural narrative, repeated often enough, can pass for scientific truth for nearly a century without ever surviving basic empirical scrutiny. Yet, dispelling a medical myth does not erase the unique psychological architecture formed in a house without siblings. Loneliness in an only child is rarely dramatic, loud, or visible. It operates as an ambient frequency beneath daily life. Most are comfortable in solitude, becoming early architects of rich inner worlds, capable of disappearing for hours into literature, art, or abstract thought. But solitude is merely the physical absence of others. True loneliness is the absence of a witness who shares your exact perspective. Growing up without a sibling means navigating family dynamics without an equal. There is no one sitting beside you at the dinner table during an argument to validate your confusion with a quiet glance. No peer to share the unwritten rules, the subtle shifts in room atmosphere, or the sudden drop in household temperature when tension rises. The single child becomes the sole archivist of their entire childhood, processing every unexpressed emotion in isolation. Over time, the nervous system adapts. It becomes a hyper-vigilant radar, scanning rooms for emotional cues, reading facial micro-expressions, and sensing hostility long before a word is spoken. This early environment creates a distinct psychological phenomenon known as adult-dominated socialization. Surrounded constantly by grown-up conversation, adult humor, and complex stress, the child adapts upward. They speak like adults, think like adults, and absorb emotional responsibilities far beyond their developmental age. Without a sibling to diffuse the emotional weight of the household, they quietly become the unassigned peacekeeper, the mediator during conflict, or the silent confidant when a parent feels overwhelmed. Outside the home, this creates a profound disconnect. On the playground, peers can feel chaotic, unpredictable, or jarringly immature. The child finds themselves caught in a silent middle ground, emotionally too old for their peers, yet biologically too young for the adult world they understand so well. When social development occurs primarily in public arenas, rather than through the private, low-stakes friction of sibling rivalries, the mind adapts through two primary survival patterns. The first is hyper-accommodation, becoming overly agreeable and hyper-attuned to others out of a quiet fear that losing a friend means losing their only peer connection. The second is hyper-independence, building an impenetrable boundary of self-reliance, where needing help feels unsafe and letting others close feels like a dangerous surrender of control. This dynamic reaches its ultimate reality in late adulthood. When a parent ages or falls ill, there is no shared responsibility, no division of hospital shifts, and no sibling to share the financial or emotional burden. Every decision, from medical interventions to final arrangements, rests entirely on one mind. And when those parents are gone, the quiet aftermath reveals the deepest truth of the experience. There is no one left alive who remembers the exact same dinners, the same living rooms, or the original context of your earliest memories. The archive belongs to you alone.